Hi, it's KCCK's Culture Crawl. I'm Dennis Green, and my guest today is Dr. Evelyn Carter, author, social psychologist, actress, whose book is entitled Was That Racist? And you're going to be in Iowa to do a couple of events surrounding that. I should say off the top that you have an Iowa connection. Your
Yes.
family is from Cedar Rapids. Your mom, Ann Harris Carter, just started a new job at
Yes.
the African
Yes.
American Museum.
Yep.
In
As
the
the executive
library.
director, very
Yes,
excited.
and your grandparents, Percy and Lilia Harris, who are legendary Cedar Rapids community leaders that I had a chance to spend some time with in their later years. So you live in California, but your Iowa connections are strong.
Yes, I love the Midwest.
Before we start talking specifically about the book, just tell me a little bit about your school and career journey and what led you into the field that you practice in.
Yeah, so the path that led me to this career actually began with plastic surgery. So I originally wanted to be a dentist. And then when I hit high school, I decided that I was going to become a plastic surgeon. And I went to undergrad and I was very much committed to this idea of being a plastic surgeon. In fact, my email address that I used for my applications was ERC, my initials, MD to be at AOL.com, sign of the times. And I was in the courses that were prerequisites for medical school, right? General chemistry, calculus, organic chemistry. And I was just like sloughing my way through. Oh my goodness. And I basically, through the guidance of a very good college counselor, decided to change my major so that I could maintain the pre-med coursework, but get some relief from my schedule elsewhere. And they said, you seem to enjoy science. And so have you considered social sciences? And it was either psychology or sociology or anthropology. And so intro to psychology happened to have an opening that upcoming quarter. And so I registered for that, realized that I should have been a psychologist all along, and fell in love with the idea that I could do research to understand the way that people's groups and identities influence the way that they saw the world around them. And so through that, I became a research assistant. I got involved in leading the studies that I had participated in as an undergraduate in that intro class. And basically realized that I wanted to get my PhD instead of my MD. And that really was what catapulted me on this path toward doing research on how people decide what counts as racial bias and how they have conversations about it, leading workshops for executives and managers and individual contributors who are trying to figure out how to create and sustain an inclusive culture at work. But yeah, a lot of it boiled down to the influence of a very good college counselor at Northwestern University.
It always comes down to a great teacher somewhere along the line, doesn't
Yes,
it?
yes. And as I think back to my trajectory, it really is punctuated by these moments of having incredible mentors and faculty members and counselors who saw things in me that I didn't even understand at the time. And being able to say, I'm noticing that your eyes light up when you talk about this thing, or when you do this, or you are really good at connecting with people in this way. And them helping set the lily pad in front of me that would be the thing that got me to the next stage of my career. So yeah, this is part of the reason why mentorship is so important to me, because that ability to really see in someone the truest things about who they are and what excites them, and then help them bring that to fruition, is something that I don't take lightly at all.
You obviously had great mentors who helped you along the way, but as a Black woman, you also encountered significant barriers, I'm
Yeah,
certain, which had to have been a contributing
yeah,
factor into
yeah,
the into your career choice. So talk about
yeah.
that for just a little bit.
Yeah, so yes, I am a Black woman, and I was actually I just did a LinkedIn post today talking about one of those experiences. So I love leading workshops, and I've done that for several years. And after I led one in particular, there was a faculty member who had attended, and he came up to me and he was like, he was very laudatory. You're great. This is fantastic. You're such a good presenter. And he said, I just can't help but feel like you'd be even more effective if you were an older white man. And
Oh no.
I have a mug that says, be careful or you will end up in my book. And he did not end up in this book, but there is a second one brewing, and everybody has an opportunity to be a story in my book, and he will end up there. But I think, in his own twisted way, this was a Hispanic man who had seen some things and lived through some things. And I want to believe that he thought he was being helpful, right? That he was saying, like, ugh, racism sucks and sexism sucks. And it would have been so much like, but the way that he said it just reinforced those same things that he was, I think, trying to speak against, right? But the thing that really propelled me to write this book and really to do the research that I did is because of my early experiences in those pre-med classes. So I went to a predominantly white institution, right? Northwestern University has never been mistaken for a historically Black college or university. The population of Black students was quite low when I was there. It still is the case today. And it was even lower in those pre-med courses, right? And there were all of these signals that it was unlikely that I was going to be successful in those classes. And I remember starting to have panic attacks, which I didn't know that's what they were at the time, but they were panic attacks. I went to the student health center to seek counseling, and they told me that I likely had test anxiety. And so they said, Evelyn, think about how you can calm yourself down before tests. So create a playlist of soothing music, give yourself a treat like chocolate, right? They gave me all of these tools. And the summer before I went to grad school, read Claude Steele's book, Whistling Vivaldi. Claude Steele is my academic grandfather, so he's the advisor of my graduate advisor. And I read his book in which he talks about stereotype threat. And stereotype threat is the fear of confirming or being seen to confirm negative stereotypes about your group. The easiest way to think about stereotype threat is if you are a member of a group that is negatively stereotyped, whether you believe that stereotype or not, you know that is how people in the world might evaluate you. And that adds an extra weight on your shoulders that people who don't face that stereotype don't have. And that weight makes it difficult for you to perform at your best. And I realized that I had been experiencing stereotype threat in my pre-med coursework. It wasn't test anxiety. It was the anxiety that I was feeling as a young Black girl who was one of a few chocolate drops in a sea of vanilla, and worrying that I was carrying the weight of my race and my gender and my family history in with me every single time I sat down in that classroom. And so to me, part of being a researcher, part of being somebody who studies things like how to create more inclusive environments, things like how to foster belonging when you are underrepresented, part of that responsibility is not just writing articles that are going to go into academic journals behind paywalls that has jargon that few people, even academics, even understand. Part of it is figuring out, how do I write this in a way that's accessible for the everyday consumer, the student like me who doesn't need chocolate to get through their exam. They need their professor to signal to them that it's not about whether you are a woman or a man or Black or white or what have you that is going to influence how you proceed in this class. It's about the skills that you cultivate over time. It's about the diligence that you show. It's about the community that you find as you're studying together, right?
And you make a great point, too, that if you truly want to affect change and have an effect on people, you can write all the scholarly articles in the world, but what you really need to do is get something out to where people can grok it, can understand it. And
yeah, absolutely.
I said before we rolled tape that I thank you for this book, that you obviously wrote it for me, because
exactly for you.
as a white, start off as a white man, but as a white man whose main job is working for an organization that promotes and protects historic African American music, jazz,
Yeah.
I have a lot of imposter syndrome as to am I doing this right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I'm very anxious to read the book and see what's going right and where I can improve. You already told me, but I'm just say it on tape. Who is this book for?
So I people ask me this all the time, and I tell them that this book is for white people and anyone who interacts with white people. A funny anecdote is that I was at an event a few months ago, and the organizers had ordered a number of my books, which I love a good bulk order, and there were some left over, and so I was walking around the event handing books out to people, right? Free book, woohoo! And there was a black woman who was there, and she kind of looked at me and she was like, girl, isn't this book just for white people? And I was like, mm-mm. And let me tell you why. Right? So if you are a white person, I want you to read my book and be able to see yourself in the pages in some way, shape, or form, right? Maybe you were the person that was saying the kinds of things that I label as microaggressions or as overt racism. Maybe you are married to that person, or they're your family member, your mom, your dad, your grandparents, what have you. Maybe you are someone that interacts with folks who share those beliefs, and you are trying to figure out how you can have a conversation that really drives forward the theme of anti-racism and inclusion for them, right? So that's what I think white people will get out of the book. But if you are not a white person, our world is still built in such a way where whiteness is the dominant kind of group, the dominant way that you have to align to yourself in order to get power in most settings, right? And that's very draining. And I think in the same way that I didn't know that I was experiencing stereotype threat, I want people who are not white, and those who are white, but people who are not white especially, to read my book and say, oh, that's why they were acting that way. It's not that I needed to do something different. It's not that I am wrong. It's that the way that racism proceeds it unfolds in such a manner that is nuanced, that is layered, that can sometimes be subtle, and I want to give them the language to understand how that shows up. And so my hope is that it is a guidebook for people that my book is a guidebook for people who want to understand how bias shows up and how to combat it. And that it's also a little bit of a manual, or like a kind of a thing to see under the hood for folks of color to be like, oh, okay. I get it now. And to take some of the stress off of their shoulders, trying to interpret all of the things that happen when you are a person of color in this world experiencing racism.
Dr. Evelyn Carter will be in the Cedar Rapids and Iowa City area for a couple of appearances to talk about her book and sign copies. Was That Racist? You'll be at Prairie Lights bookstore doing live from Prairie Lights on the 9th of June, I think. Am I getting that right? Yes. And then June 11th at Mom's new house
Yes.
at the African American Museum and Library,
Yes.
where your mom, Ann Carter, is the brand new executive director, in conversation with a friend of KCCK, Rob Klein.
Yeah. I'm really excited.
Before we go, I guess the elephant in the room right now is whither DEI. It is not an easy time
Yeah.
to be promoting and talking about
Oh, no, it's
diversity
not.
and
Yep.
equity right now. So just tell me how it's going.
Yeah, there was an article that came out in Bloomberg a little bit ago, a few days ago, that my mom sent me actually this morning because it ran in the Gazette, and the headline is DEI isn't dead, but it's not really alive either. And I thought that was a brilliant way to describe how it feels, right? There are lots of people who would love to put the final nail in the coffin of DEI and be like, haha, we have killed it, right? The president actually said as much in the State of the Union address this year. And that's not true, because I'm still here. I still talk about diversity, equity, inclusion. I had a call with a client just before this for whom I'm doing a workshop on the science of inclusion. So it's not dead, but it's also not exactly alive. And the reality is that there are many organizations that have prematurely capitulated to a lot to the kind of anti-DEI, quote unquote, anti-woke rhetoric that has been out there. And I say prematurely capitulated because what we're finding is as some of those rulings are going through the courts with even a little bit of a challenge, they're realizing that the arguments don't hold water. And it's going interestingly is the simplest answer. And what I would say is that I am enjoying finding the organizations and the people like you who are continuing to platform these conversations. And I'm trying to focus on that. I will say, though, and I said this in March of 2020, when the pandemic, kind of the onset of the pandemic here in the United States, prompted a lot of organizations to just ruthlessly and indiscriminately slash their entire DEI teams. And then a couple months later, when George Floyd was murdered, they tried to hire them all back because they realized actually they were necessary. What I said then is, I know how to hold a really good grudge. My memory is very, very good. Maybe not short-term memory. I have a toddler. I have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. Short-term memory is, but long-term memory, I don't forget. I do not forget the organizations that pulled away from DEI in March of 2020, and I certainly have not forgotten the ones that are doing it now. And so, what I think everybody should be thinking about is when the dust on all of this settles, what side of history do you want to be on? And we have seen throughout history lots of moments, maybe not exactly like this, but similar to this, where there is backlash against the fight for justice and equity. And you do not want to be answering the question of where were you at the time when people were trying to silence equity in 2024, 2025, whatever. You don't want to be the person that says, I was the one saying that we really shouldn't be saying DEI because it's quote unquote divisive. Yeah, I will remember.
At the end of the day, a society that works is one that includes everybody
Yeah.
and their talents, and that's what we're all after.
Yeah.
And I thank you for all of your work, not just the book, but all of your research and the one-on-one sessions that you do. I know that one thing that you really work on with these, when you do these workshops and things, is it's not just about dry role playing or making
Yeah.
people feel bad about themselves.
No.
You really work hard to make people come out of this feeling like they've learned something and had a good time.
Yes, I have said for years that I think DEI has a PR problem. That clearly is the case now, right? But there were so many times I would lead corporate workshops and somebody would leave. Actually, I remember one time it was an older white guy and he was like, somebody told me to have fun when I came to this session. And apparently word had gotten out around the company because I'd done some workshops before that people had a good time. I believe that having difficult conversations that challenge you should make you feel lots of things. And sometimes those feelings will be hard, quite frankly, to navigate. Sometimes it will make you feel ashamed, guilty, nervous, anxious. And I view my job as a diversity, equity, inclusion practitioner really, at the end of the day, is to be a teacher. And anybody who is a teacher knows that you have to find the balance between bringing people along and also challenging them. And so to me, the combo of can I make you laugh when you don't expect it? Can I bring you on this roller coaster of emotions where I'm creating a bond of trust with you at the beginning so that you know I am not going to let this car fly off of the rails, but we are going to get to the peak of the roller coaster and you are going to feel a little bit of overwhelm and scare as you go down, right? But I'm there with you the entire time. That is what I view my job as a DEI practitioner to be. And I always say people, you should expect to be uncomfortable, but that is not the only thing that you will feel when you are in a workshop with me. And the reason you feel uncomfortable is because your eyes are going to be opened to the way that the world works. And that is going to challenge what you might have believed previously. And that's good. That means you're learning. And so that combo of like, I like to subvert expectations, make people think, feel, cry, and laugh, sometimes all in the span of 1 hour-long workshop with me.
The book is Was That Racist by Dr. Evelyn Carter, appearing in Iowa City on the 9th of June and in Cedar Rapids on June 11th. Evelyn, if people want to find out more about the book, they want to sign up for your email list, check out your social presence, how do they do that?
Yeah, so the best way to do that is on my website, which is evelynrcarter.com. That's where I have any if you've got like research nerds out there who want to read all of my academic papers, they're there. Any of the popular press articles I've written are there as well. I've got videos, I've got lots of stuff on my website, and that's also where you can subscribe to my newsletter, which is called hashtag There's a Study for That, where I include a short essay that is musings on pop culture, research, and identity. And then, of course, lots of information about my favorite studies, of which there are many. So, evelynrcarter.com is the starting ground. And then from there, choose your own adventure.
Looking forward to seeing you when you're in Iowa, Evelyn. Thanks so much for talking with me today, and good luck with this project and the future projects, too.
Thank you for having me.
You can hear The Culture Crawl live on the radio most weekdays at 10:30, on demand at kcck.org/culture, or subscribe using your favorite podcast player. Watch our videos on the KCCK Facebook and YouTube channels. Our producer is Lydia Kilgore. The Culture Crawl theme is composed by Vivian Shanley. I'm Dennis Green, and I'll talk to you later.